So Rabbi Sai, last week we gave a shir about rain, and thank God, in Eretz Sol we've experienced much rain. So obviously my shir was a success. But this shir is about suicide. We do not want to have the same level of success. Obviously, we don't want another Jonestown or Heaven Gate cult. You know what that stuff is. These are stories of mass suicide. We do not need any of this. This is clearly not a halacha litmaisa shir. Clearly. So, this the issur of suicide is actually alluded to in a pasuk in Parshas Noach. Rashi brings it down, and it says over there, "As achas dimchem lenafsheseichem edroish," and from there we learn that the Rabbi Shalom told Noach that what dimchem lenafsheseichem, it means if you commit suicide, edroish, I will seek you out. Meaning, if you commit suicide, for obvious reasons, you're probably not chayiv misa b'dei adam, because you're dead already. But edroish means that you're going to get your just desserts in the next world. Meaning, you're going to get punished in Olam Haba. We'll talk about it in a minute. Rashi brings a drasha, and don't think only if there's dimchem, I mean only if you like shoot yourself so there's a lot of blood all over. No, even if you the way you commit suicide is, but you're choinik, you strangle yourself, so it's a very clean way to go because there's no blood. Rashi makes a drush in the extra word S, even then, it's not permitted to commit suicide. Fine. And this is brought down in the Rambam. The Gemara's about this. Rashi didn't make this up. There's the Gemara's. Rambam brings down in Hilchos Masayach. He brings down that there are certain people who are chayiv misa b'dei shemayim, they're no misa b'dei adam. For example, someone who hires a hitman, or someone who basically takes a person and traps him in an area where there's a lion. So basically, you kill them indirectly. Or v'chein hahorik es atzmai, anyone who kills himself. Kol echem el-shev damu. These are all considered cases of your murderer, v'avan hariga b'yadai, and it's considered your murder. So if you kill yourself, you are considered a murderer. But obviously, you don't get killed. You don't get punished in this world. You get punished in the next. And for the other cases where you kill through a hitman, you chayiv misa b'dei shemayim. Fine. Now, what is this called in rabbinical parlance? It's called ma'abed atzmai ledas. That's what it's called. Somebody commits suicide. Says the Rambam, quoting a brisa in Masechta Smachos, Masechta Eivor Abasi. Hama'abed atzmai ledas. Someone who commits suicide. What? It's called Masechta. We call it Masechta Smachos, but it's really a euphemism. Smachos is all about Avelis. So sometimes all proper it's called Eivor Abasi, but we'll call it Smachos. But it's the same thing. Okay? If you open up a Gemara, it says in the back. It says Masechta Smachos. That is called Eivor Abasi, or the other way. Masechta Eivor Abasi. In the back of the Gemaras, there's a lot of small little Gemaras. So really brises. Exactly, Masechta Ketanos, very good. So, it says over there, Hama'abed atzmai das, somebody commits suicide, Ein misaskimai l'chol davar, Lo misadlov, there's no avelis. So, usually no, God forbid if a relative dies, you said Shiva, there's no avelis for someone who commits suicide, Lo maspidin I say, there's no eulogy, and we all know the minig is that we bury him in a different place. We don't give him the proper burial. So basically, it's considered a very, very egregious sin if you commit suicide. Okay? Now, there is a famous adage, you'll see that all over. Someone who's ma'abed atzmai das has no chelik in olam haba. The truth is, there is no Gemara like this. There is no open medrash or anything that says this. But everyone knows it. And all the achronim are trying to figure out, how do we know this? If it doesn't say it anywhere openly. Maybe at the end of the shir, we'll try to find some of the sources. Okay? So this is part of the Rambam's list of people who doesn't have Kedem. No, it's not part of the Rambam's list. And it's definitely, even if it was part of the Rambam's list, where did the Rambam get it from? Rambam didn't make anything up. So basically, everyone's trying to figure out where does this famous adage come from, or maxim come from, or statement come from. Fine. So, the Ksav Kabbalah, which is one of my favorite mefarshim on Chumash, he already starts talking about suicide is not mutter, clearly. But maybe sometimes it would be mutter, right? It's called mercy killing, the Greek word for it, right? Euthanasia, right? Is the Greek word for it. So, are you allowed to kill someone who's, God forbid, deathly ill, he's terminally ill, he's, he's basically he's undergoing much pain. So maybe it'll be merciful, right? Euthanasia. Maybe it'll be merciful and you're allowed to kill him. So the Ksav Kabbalah says that actually the pasuk in Parashat Noach is talking about that case. So if you look at the pasuk there, it says, "Aches dimchem l'nafshtechem edrois, miyad adam miyad ish achiv." So it's a little redundant. It says over there, if someone is a murderer, that part of the pasuk is talking about a murderer, whether the murderer is an adam or whether the murderer is ish achiv. So it says the Ksav Kabbalah, what's this redundancy? That is intimating sometimes someone is a murderer because he just wants to steal, or for some devious reason he kills someone. But sometimes someone is a murderer for merciful reasons, because he wants to kill the victim is going through a lot of pain, a lot of suffering. So the pasuk is intimating even that is usher. How is it intimating that? Because it says miyad adam or miyad ish achiv. Ish achiv connotes that there's a friendly relationship. Why would an ish kill his achiv? It must be he's doing it because he feels it's for the benefit of the one who's being murdered. He feels it's for the benefit of the victim because the victim is going through very difficult times. Like he said, terminal illness. He's very sick. The Ksav Kabbalah says, no, even that the Torah does not condone. But when the Ksav Kabbalah says, and I'll show you examples. Where do we have examples like this in the Tanakh where someone murders someone else out of mercy? Where do we have examples like this? So the Ksav Kabbalah says the most famous example is by Shaul. The famous example by Shaul is we know that Shaul went to war on Har Gilboa, and for whatever reasons, Rabbi decided that he would lose this war, and all his sons were killed, and we know that Shaul himself was killed. But if you know the story, the pasuk says that Shaul was losing the war, and basically he was surrounded by the enemy. He was surrounded by the archers, and he got. Shaul said to his caddy, to the one who was his arm bearer, please kill me. Please kill me. Because there's no chance. Because the Plishtim, right? He deprecates them, he calls them Arelim. They're going to come, they're going to Visalabi, they're going to torture me, they're going to stab me. But his arms bearer didn't want to do it. Because he's very scared. That was the story. That would be a case of someone murdering for merciful reasons. Shaul says, listen, I'm about to be captured, I'm about to be tortured, I'm about to be made sport of. Oh. So says the Ksav Kabbalah, that's what the pasuk is talking about. Miyad ish achiv. Even though the arm bearer would have killed Shaul for merciful reasons, even that the Torah does not condone. Even that the Torah says is wrong. Now, What happened at the end of the day with Shaul? What happened at the end of the day with Shaul? It says, "Vayikach Shaul es cherev vayipol leo." Shaul took matters in his own hand and he fell on his sword. He actually killed himself. Okay, it seems according to the Ksava Kabbalah's interpretation that this was usher. Shaul did a sin by killing himself. It's funny, we never actually said in the pasuk a minute later, Vayar noisikev kimei Shaul v'yipol gam hu achar boi. Vayamas imay. He's actually never mentioned. Actually, the end of the story is that the arms bearer, the caddy, he also went ahead and killed himself. No one ever talked about him. But the truth is, there was a double suicide. Shaul killed himself, and the arm bearer killed himself too. There will be a continuation of the story, which we probably will not get to today. So, Gadi, did you write this? Did you write this year? So here is the case in Navi that someone committed suicide, and the Ksav Kabbalah condemns more or less what was done. And he's saying that's alluded in the pasuk that even though it's for merciful reasons, you're not allowed to murder someone for merciful reasons, and you're not allowed to kill yourself for reasons of because you want to basically avoid some bad situation. Oh, now this is going to be the question of this is going to be what the shir is going to be about today, more or less. There are actually other cases in Tanakh of suicide. Does anyone know of other cases in Tanakh? Not the story that you're talking about, which is the second Beis Hamikdash. That's the Gemara in Gittin. Does anyone know the other cases of suicide in Tanakh? Well, the famous Shimshon. You all know that story. Everyone knows the story of Shimshon HaGiver, right? Right? So that was suicide. He was captured by the Philistines, and he decided to bring down the house, literally, to bring down the house. And he pushed away the pillars, and he died. So that's one case of a suicide. There is another famous case with Avimelech, not Avimelech that we have in these coming parshas of Melech Gror. There was, in the Shoftim, there was a famous Shofet named Gidon. Right? Gidon, famous Shofet. And when he died, he had 70 sons. And one of his sons was named Avimelech. And there was a little bit of a tussle who should take over. So Avimelech killed 70 of his brothers. Right? That's fraternity for you. Fraternal love. He killed 70 of his brothers, and Avimelech took over. So Avimelech was a Shofet for 3 years, but he really wasn't a favorite amongst the people. And at the end of the day, when he was trying to take down a certain, right, you know the story? Gidon, Avimelech, right? You guys should don't read Harry Potter. There's much better stuff in the Bible. Much better stuff in the Bible, right? So you got Avimelech is trying to take down a rebellion, and a woman throws a rock from the top of a tower. It hits Avimelech's head, it's mentioned many times in Tanakh as infamy that he was killed by a woman. But the truth is, what happened was his head got crushed, but he was still alive. And he asked his arm bearer to kill him, and the arm bearer killed him. That was the story of Avimelech. And who else killed himself in Tanakh? Achitophel. Achitophel. We all know Achitophel. Who's that? Oh Lord. Achitophel, the arch enemy of David HaMelech, and it was even his father, his grandfather-in-law. It could be Bathsheba was actually his granddaughter. Be it as it may, Achitophel, when he realized that his rebellion against David HaMelech was not going to work out, who rebelled against David HaMelech? His son Avshalom. And Achitophel supported Avshalom, but when Avshalom did not take his advice, Achitophel went ahead and killed himself. Right? These are the only cases that I know of. Shimshon, Shaul, Achitophel, Avimelech. If there are other cases in Tanakh, please let me know. These are the only ones that I know about. Right? These are the only ones I know about. Be the name. It says openly, the Ksava Kabbalah says what Shaul did was wrong. Okay? We can concentrate now on Shaul. But the truth is, there's a medrash about this. And the medrash seems to say to the contrary of what the Ksava Kabbalah said, because the medrash says, I forgot to bring it. It says the ach es dimchem lenafshtechem. Now the word ach is always a miyut. It's always to an exclusion. So the medrash says ach to exclude Shaul HaMelech meaning the Issur of suicide did not apply to Shaul HaMelech. That's it. That's the Medrash.
What are all the other stories?
What?
What are all the other stories?
It only talks about Shaul. We have to, clearly, Shaul, if you know anything about Shaul, he was a tzaddik Yesod Olam. You know, whatever failures he may have had in the Tanakh, the Gemara, the pasuk says Shaul like a ben shana. He wasn't a ben shana, he was 50 years old. No, he was like a ben shana that he never sinned. And if you know anything about when Mashiach comes, the pasuk said there are 7 leaders are going to come, and 8 leaders are going to come, and one of those famous leaders are Shaul. Shaul is way up there, right? However, the Tanakh colors Shaul maybe in an unfavorable light, but in Torah Shabbat Peh, he's tzaddik Yesod Olam. So it can't be that Shaul did something so blatantly wrong, in the sense that he would be ma'avad after das, like we said, it can't be. So the Medrash, at least the Medrash, says Aches Dimchem is a miyut to tell you that what Shaul did was actually okay. Oh, so all of the Mefarshim Medrash are like, why? We know you're not allowed to commit suicide. So why was it okay for Shaul to do what he did? So the Yeshivat Torah says, you know why it was okay for Shaul to do what he did? Because Shaul anyway knew he was going to die. Shaul knew he was going to die. How do you know it? Because if you read the story of Shaul and the witch, right? You know the story of Shaul and the witch? You should read Navi. It's a great story. So basically, the Shaul went ahead and brought about a witch, and it was a whole story. Basically, soon Nevuah, Shaul knew that he was going to die. It wasn't a question. And on the contrary, and the Nevuah said, if you go to war, you're going to die, and that's what I want you to do. He could have run away. Shaul did not have to die. He could have not fought this war. But he knew that was the right thing to do, because that's what the Navi said should be done. And he went to the war, and he knew he was going to die. So basically, yes, you're not allowed to commit suicide. You're not allowed to commit suicide. But if the Navi told you you're going to die, so it was 1,000%. It was more than 1,000%. You could be 140 years old and you have a terminal illness. That's not 1,000%. This was 1,000%, and he was going to be tortured. So that's why Shaul had a heter. So that basically, according to the Yeshivat Torah, only Shaul, no one else in the world would ever have a heter to commit suicide. Only Shaul, who knew through a Navi that he was going to die anyway. So Shaul said, "I'm going to die for sure," and it's just a question of a couple minutes. And if I stay alive, I'll be tortured. That was the heter.
So what?
What?
So what?
So what? So basically, you put the equation. A, for sure going to die. B, I could avoid terrible torture. C, that's the heter. It will not apply anywhere else. It will not apply to a terminal ill person. It will not apply to someone being tortured by captured by an enemy country and he's being tortured. It wouldn't apply there, because there is no Navi who told those people are going to die. There's no Navi who said a terminal ill person will die. There's no Navi who said that the guy who got captured by Hezbollah is going to die, right? So therefore, there would be no heter in those cases to commit suicide. Only Shaul and no one else.
I always thought of the nevuah that says like something bad will happen to you. There's a chance that it could be reversed.
Excellent question. I cannot answer that right now. The short answer is because it also was in that nevuah that you will die is that David will become a king. It was a combined nevuah. So it was a nevuah that had a good aspect to it too. Okay, that's the short answer. Be it as it may. Next, the Razu, which is also a famous Pirush, says only Shaul HaMelech could kill himself. Why only Shaul HaMelech? Because it would have been such a chilul Hashem. It would have been such a major chilul Hashem for a king to get captured and to be made sport of. Who knows what they would have done to him? So again, the Razu says Shaul was the king. A king is allowed to kill himself. It's a Pirush on the that's not a Rishon. It's an Achrein on the I don't remember what the acronym is. It's an acronym, but everyone calls him the Razu. So he's a Pirush on the Medrash, and so basically only Shaul HaMelech, because he's a king, and the Razu said it would be a terrible chilul Hashem for a king to be made sport of by an enemy army. So basically, Only Shoal.
What about a shofar? Shofar doesn't have that name.
I don't know if we'll get to that. No. Next. But there are Rishonim. There are Rishonim who already deal with this question. Rishonim, meaning what I told you, the Yeshivat Ohr and the Rizal are Achronim, and they give understanding why Shoal was allowed to commit suicide. But in reality, there's a Das and Canaan Balitoisis, which is the Balitoisis. They ask this question. And they say something amazing. Something amazing. And they say like this. They say, you know why Shoal was allowed to do what he did? Not because he was a king. Not because he knew for sure he was going to die. Because the Plishtim would force Shoal through torture to do Averis. They would force Shoal to bow down to the Avodah Zarah, maybe to do something immoral. They would do something immoral with him. But that was the het of Shoal. The het of Shoal said something like this. If I stay alive, they're going to capture me, and they're going to force me to do the Gimel Chamuris, or they're going to force me to do terrible Averis. And therefore, I have a het to kill myself. And says the Dasid Goyim, and hence, in the times of Shmat, in the time when the Goyim are forcing Jewish people to convert, parents are allowed to kill their kids to ensure that they do not convert. Right. That's what I'm talking about. In the times, during the time of the Crusades, meaning that's based on this medrash that said there was mutal for Shoal. He doesn't say only to Shoal, like the Yeshivat Ohr and the Rizal say, because he was a king or because he knew he was going to die. He says it applies to any time when through torture you will be forced to convert, or children who automatically will convert. You kill the children. You kill the children to ensure that they don't convert or basically convert, right? Mikamavi and Raya, Oisin Shashoitin Atinik B'Shas HaGzeira. Wow. Okay? Talk about that. We'll get to that. Next. Now, that's Ken about Toises, which is in every Bikras Kedosh Chumash, says, God forbid, there is no way that you're allowed to kill your children because you're afraid they're going to convert, because they're going to be forced to convert, right? There's no way. And they say that they somehow or other have a different reading of the Medrash, and they say that the Medrash said that Shoal did was wrong. They hold like a Ksav Kabbalah. They have a different way to read the Medrash, and they say, that's right, Shoal did it. You know why Shoal did it? Because he thought that he's going to be tortured and he's going to be forced to do Avodah Zarah. But Shoal was wrong. Shoal was wrong. Then he brings here the Daf Keni Maisim. There was a story that there was a Rav that was walking around killing children. B'Shas Zman. There was a Rav, right? Big frock, big beard, walking around with a machete. Just killing children. Because he was afraid that they would be forced to convert. And there was another Rav in that same town who said, you're a murderer. What you're doing is crazy. And that the Rav who said that it was wrong says that if you're wrong, you should die a Misa Meshuna. God should punish you for what you're doing, killing children. And what happened was that the first Rav was caught by the Goyim, and they ripped off his skin, and they put sand all over his body, and they put the skin on, and he died a very, very terrible death. And what happened was a couple of days later, the whole Gzeira was nullified, meaning the Goyim stopped forcing people to convert, and the rabbi who was alive said, look, you killed all these kids. The Gzeira was annulled. Those kids would have still been alive, and we would have been able to get them back. So he's trying to say the other rabbi who was alive said, look, what you did was wrong. You, Rabbi X, killed all these kids because they're going to come converted. Well, look what happened. A couple weeks later, the decree was annulled, and if you wouldn't have killed them, they still would have been alive, and we would have been able to basically get them back. That's the story. But Kitzer, this is Tosis, Bali Tosis. So one Bali Tosis says, from Shol we can learn you're allowed to kill yourself when you're afraid because of torture. You're gonna be convert. You're gonna do one of the Gimel Chamuras. And the extension of that is you're allowed to kill kids because they're struggling to convert. The other rabbi said that's ridiculous, and actually what Shaul did was wrong. So you tell me, okay, Rabbi, fine, that's Cain and Bali Tosis. You know, it's Tosis, but who will? Yeah. The truth is, this is open Tosim in Gemara. This is open Tosim in the Gemara that bring down this machlokes, because we have a story in Hanizakin which he mentioned, right? The story in Hanizakin that brings down that there were 400 children that were captured to be used for immoral purposes, boys and girls. Both of them were going to be used for moral purposes. And the girls said, and they were on a ship, being shipped off to Rome. This is the second base of English, not the first base of English, right? And the girls said to the boys, what happens if we jump? Will we get out of harbor? Will we get out of harbor if we jump and kill ourselves? And the boys brought a pasuk that yes. And all the girls committed suicide. Then the boys said, hey, if those girls could do it, we should probably do it too also. Because whatever immoral action will be happening with girls, it's much more immoral when it happens with boys, right? And basically what happened, they also jumped off. So we see here that what happened, they committed suicide in the Gemara.
Sounds like a fun group activity.
And it seems the boys and the girls.
This is the Gemara saying this, or this Tosfos?
The Gemara, that's the Gemara, the famous Gemara. Gemara gets them. 400 people killed themselves, the boys and the girls. Wait. That's the Gemara. Frek Tosfos. Wait a minute. We have a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, also equally happy Gemara, if I must say. We have a Gemara in Avodah Zarah with the famous Reb Chanina bar Tradian. What's the story? Reb Chanina bar Tradian. I'll just say the story quickly. Reb Chanina bar Tradian was living in the times, I also assume, of the Romans. And he came to visit Rabbi Yossi bar Kisma. And Rabbi Yossi bar Kisma said, Reb Chanina, what are you doing? I heard you're giving shir in public. You're teaching Torah in public. What are you doing, Reb Chanina? Don't you know that that God has empowered the Romans and has given a license to the Romans? Because Rabbi Shalom let the Romans destroy the Beis Hamikdash, and the Rabbi Shalom let the Romans kill so many of his Hasidim, of the pious Jews. And I hear that you're learning Torah. What are you doing? What are you doing? So Rechina said back, Min Hashemayim Yirachmu, don't worry, God would have mercy. It'll be okay. That's what Rechina bar Tradian said. It'll be okay. So Rabbi Yossi bar Kisma is his Rebbe. And he's also very sick now. Rabbi Yossi bar Kisma is dying. Says like this. What are you talking about? I'm talking to you practical, and you're telling me Min Hashemayim Yirachmu? Right? So the student tells the Rebbe, don't worry, it'll be okay. You know, like the guys go to Kyle. Everything will be okay, we'll manage, it'll be okay. So the father-in-law says, what are you talking about? I'm talking tachas over here, right? So that's what's happening over here. Rechina bar Tradian says, everything will be okay, don't worry about it. And Rabbi Yossi Kisma says, what are you talking about? I'm talking practicality here. And then Rabbi Yossi Kisma says, I'm telling you what's going to happen. You're going to get killed, and the Torah that you're using to teach, they're going to burn it with you too. That's the story. Then there's a whole interim story, which I probably won't be able to. Rabbi Chanina bar Tradian says, "Oh, Rebbe, do you think I'll go to Olam Haba? By the way, do you think I'm a good guy?" So Rabbi Yossi Kisma says, "Well, did you ever do something good?" So Rabbi Chanina says, "Well, once I by accident had stucco money in one pocket, and I had my own money in the other pocket. I wasn't sure which was which, and I gave all the money to stucco. So Rabbi Yitzchak says, oh, if you do that, you're going to Olam Haba. It's like a non sequitur. They're talking about giving their lives up. Chanina says, oh, I'm giving my life up for Torah. I'm teaching Barabim, and then like he says, oh, by the way, Rebbe, you think I'll go to Olam Haba? Rabbi says, I'm not too sure. Did you ever do something good? Oh, I once gave stucco, you know. It's like, okay, but.
So what happened with the Rebbe?
Oh, what happened was, sadly enough, we all know what happened. Anyone who says, whoever comes to Yom Kippur davening, we sadly know what happened. What happened is, Chanina bar Tadyan is teaching Torah, and the Romans caught him. And what did the Romans do? They wrapped the Torah up around him. They put wool on his heart, wet wool, and they burned him. They put him on the stake. Why did they put wool on his heart? To elongate his suffering. That's the story, right? You would like a happier ending, right? You would like a much happier ending. Because since Chanina is so gung-ho, don't worry, God will have mercy, God will have mercy. And what did the Yeshivat Ohr Somayach say? You're not being practical. Well, sadly enough, we see Yeshivat Ohr Somayach was right. Fine. That's the story. It's a beautiful story. You have to go through the whole thing. But basically, Chanina bar Tadyan is burning. A slow, painful death. His daughter comes and says, Father! Basically, how could this be happening to you? You're such a tzaddik. What's going on over here? And his father says, you know, he says, if I was alone, if I was being burned alone, it would have been difficult. But I'm being burned with the Sefer Torah. So just like God will clearly seek revenge for the burning of the Sefer Torah, God will seek revenge for my burning too. Okay. So then this Talmidim said, Rebbe, he seemed to have been in a state of meditation. What do you see? What did he say? Remember what he said? I see the words of the Torah flying. The parchment being burned, but the words of the Torah flying. Right? Fine. At the end of the day, this is the part we need to get to. This is the part we need to get to. At the end of the day, they said, Rebbe, open up your mouth in order to die quicker. Open up your mouth in order to die quicker. Obviously, the fire was like engulfing him all over. If he would have opened the mouth, the fire would have went inside. It would have gone around the cotton and went right inside his mouth. So what does it say here? Yeshiva said, no. When God wants me to die, I'll die. I am not going to bring out my death any quicker. I'm not going to commit suicide. A good question. Good question. Right? So, what do we think here? We're seeing here someone being tortured. Someone being tortured. He could have quickened his death to avoid the pain. He would not open his mouth. He would not commit suicide. And over here, it's not even so much of a suicide. I mean, you know, he just happened to open his mouth. He wouldn't do it. So, fact tois is a kashen. How is it that these kids jumped off the boat? How is it that these kids jumped off the boat and committed suicide? We see that Chanina would not, or Chanina bar Tadyan would not commit suicide. So what is Taisus' answer? Taisus gives an answer. The kids did it because they knew they would be forced to do Averis. They were going to be raped, which is one of those cardinal sins, and therefore they were allowed to kill themselves. Meaning, let me say it again, the kids knew that they were going to be tortured and forced to do Averis, meaning at the end they would acquiesce. And since at the end the kids knew they would be tortured, and because of the torture they would acquiesce, therefore they're allowed to kill themselves. Right? So he says, Yavim adcham la'avera, kigon adei surin, shlo yochel la'amem, ati mitzvah l'chabo atzmai. So it says here, black and white, this is actually the first day of the Taisus Daskenim. That what? You are allowed to commit suicide if you know you're going to be tortured, and through the torture you will convert or you will do one of the cardinal sins. Meaning, that was the sheet that said you're allowed to kill kids, you're allowed to kill children because you knew they were going to convert. Right? Oh. On the other hand, the Re in Baba Kama says openly, for no reason are you allowed to kill yourself. You just make a statement. I can't go through all Gemara, it'll take long. He said that for no reason to kill yourself. So, what does the Re do with the Gemara, with the 400 children? I don't know. I don't know exactly what the Re does with the Gemara of the 400 children. He doesn't address it. But be it as it may, it comes out like this. And the Yam Shel Shlomo and the Ritva brings down this machlokes. And the Ritva says, B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam, you're allowed to kill yourself in order to avoid converting. Meaning in order to avoid torture, and that will lead you to convert. And the Ritva says, in France, where Rabbeinu Tam psak was accepted, people would kill their children in order that there should be conversion, and people would kill themselves when they knew that they would not be able to withstand torture. Okay? But like we said, the Re argues. Now, the Yam Shel Shlomo brings all this down. The Yam Shel brings all this down, and he says there is no way that Rabbeinu Tam is right. There's no way. Can't be. I mean, he's not arguing that Rabbeinu Tam said it. He says there's no way. And he says, what does it mean you can't withstand torture? They're torturing you to do Avodah Zarah, to convert. You won't stand it. If maybe God will give you mercy, maybe God will have mercy. And he brings there anyone who tries. He brings over here anyone who tries to do a mitzvah, God helps. And he says, who knows? Maybe something will happen very quickly, and they'll stop. The torture will stop. There's no way. You can't kill your kids, and you can't kill yourself. And then he says, and okay, you know what? The kids did convert. Maybe 30 years from now, they'll go back to the roots. Maybe they'll have children that will go back. What are you killing them for? You have no right to kill them. If the Goyim kill you, fine. You have no right to kill yourself, even though you're afraid that you may go ahead and convert. No. He says, what about Shaul? What about Shaul? Meaning, he's saying, didn't Shaul kill himself because he was afraid the Goyim were going to force him to do Avodah Zarah? Right? Oh. So, we already had two answers. One is, Shaul knew he was going to die 100%. Two is, Shaul was a king. He gives a different answer. He gives an amazing answer. He says, Shaul knew that if the Philistines capture him, Klal Yisrael are going to try to save him. They'll do everything they can to try to save the king. He knew if he didn't kill himself, the Philistines were going to catch him, and the Klal Yisrael are going to try to recapture him, re-get him back, and thousands of Jews were going to get killed. Why? Because he knew that he was going to die. So he knew that any type of mission to try to recapture him, to release him, would be unsuccessful. That's why Shaul was allowed to kill himself, in order to save many, many others. So in a nutshell, that's the Yam Shel Shlomo. His take. So let's stop here right now, for a minute. Well,
How does he address the 400?
he doesn't address the 400. He does not address the 400. He did not address the 400. Because the truth is, if you look at the Gemara by the 400, it never says that they were allowed to do what they did.
Kids, yeah.
It just said that they did it. It doesn't say black and white that they did what that was allowed. But that was the same question. The Yam Shel Shlomo basically catches. The Yam Shel Shlomo passes like the Re, that is always usher. And I asked him, what does the Re do with that Gemara? He doesn't. I don't know.
Say that there was saying that they would be they'll go straight to the Bible.
Yeah, they'll go to, that's what the boys said to the girls. There was no rabbi who gave their stamp of approval on this story. Wait a minute. Right? The word is imprimatur. No rabbi gave it imprimatur that this was right. The simple reading of the Gemara is that the simple reading of the stamp of approval. I mean stamp approval. Simple reading of the Gemara is that they brought a pasuk. It was right. Simple reading of the Gemara is that it is right, and we have to explain why it was mutter. But let's stop here right now. If we had to stop here right now, would you say a terminally ill person, God forbid, going through extreme pain? It is very painful. Trust me. People have these. Is allowed to commit suicide based on what we saw now? We would give an unequivocal no. No way. Either what Shaul did was wrong. The Ksav the Kabbalah at one side of the Medrash says he was wrong. Two, either Shaul was right, A, because he knew 1,000,000% he was going to die. A terminal ill person doesn't know 1,000,000%. There are stories of miracles. Two, either he was a king. Three, either because he was afraid that he was going to be tortured and forced to convert or forced to do avodah zarah. None of these reasons are applicable by a terminally ill person or a person who's having a bad day or someone who's depressed, right? Right? None of these reasons apply. Now, none of these reasons apply. Now, but it's not so simple. Why? Because we have here the Sefer Mimamakim. The Mimamakim, who wrote the Mimamakim? The famous Rabbi Oshri. These are all the shilas. He was a big Rav, and he answered all the shilas during the Holocaust. All the shilas during the Holocaust. He has like it's five volumes, and he addresses all the shilas that were asked during the Holocaust. Right? So what does Mimamakim really mean in Hebrew? From the depths. The depths of what? Hell. The depths of Hades. Right? That's what it was during the Holocaust. Now, so here's a question like this. Here's just a question. It was in the ghetto of Kovna, and the question was, a guy, the mayor basically, or one of the prestigious members of the Kila said, listen, it was clear that the Nazis were going to kill everyone. It was clear like day. But the way the Nazis would do it is, they would take the head of the family, put him up on like a stage, and in front of him they would kill the whole family. In an excruciating way, and then they would kill him and torture him. So this mayor, we'll call him the mayor, went over to Rabbi Oshri and said, listen, can I commit suicide? I cannot witness my family getting killed. And he said, listen, anyway, they're going to kill me. Anyway, they're going to torture me afterwards. And then I won't even get a normal burial. So let me kill myself now. And that's it. I don't got to witness my family getting killed. I don't got to go through torture because they're going to torture me. They're going to torture me also. That was the question. So he goes through all this. He goes through all this back and forth. And based on what we saw until now, no heter. Only Shaul. Only because they're afraid they're going to make it convert. Only a melech. There's no heter. Oh. But then he brings the Besamim Rosh. The Besamim Rosh. So we know what the Besamim Rosh is. There are the two most, I would say, controversial books that ever, Svarim ever came out is the Talmud Yerushalmi on Kachim, which was proven, sure, it was a forgery. And then there's the Besamim Rosh, which is the Tshuvas from the Rosh, which was found in the year 1794. Now, I don't know if you know, the Rosh did not live in the year 1794. He lived in the 1300s probably, maybe the 1200s, 1300s. So, there's a whole big debate. We'll get to this in a minute. We'll get to this a little bit later. But there's a whole big debate if this is a forgery or this really exists. Now, by the Talmud, exactly about the Talmud Yerushalmi, it's no question. About this, it's an ongoing debate. The jury is still out. You'll find many Gedolim go this way. Most Gedolim think it's a forgery. Some Gedolim think not. Well, I want to first say what the Besamim Rosh says, and we'll get back to the forgery thing. So what does the Besamim Rosh say? Shin Mem Hey. He said there was a guy who was very poor. life was not going well for him, and he committed suicide. And we know if you commit suicide, the halacha is that you can't do any aveilus. No aveilus. No mourning, no nothing. So the question was, that was the question, should they say aveilus or not? So says the Psalm Rosh, seemingly the Rosh. But what are you talking about? What are you talking about? There's nothing wrong with this guy who killed himself because he was poor. Look at Shaul. Shaul was having a bad day. And he killed himself because he was suffering. And don't say because he was a king. Don't say because he was king. Right? Nothing to do with that. It's just because he's having a bad day. He's being tortured. He brings the story of Sitkio. By Sitkio, the same story basically was being, Sitkio is being tortured and, right. Sitkio, how do you do, oh, this way, maybe. Sitkio was, we good? Sitkio, if you know the story of Sitkio, who is Sitkio?
The king.
The last king who got cast by Nebuchadnezzar. Basically, his kids got killed, and Sitkio said, please kill me first. Meaning he basically said he wanted to die before his kids, kill me first. The whole story there, how they blinded him. Be it as it may, no problem. Things are not going good for you? You're allowed to kill yourself. He says, Achitophel. It says in the Sanhedrin that Achitophel was one of the people who have no chelik in Olam Haba. If you know, the Mishnah Sanhedrin says that there are 3 kings and maybe the other way, 3 kings and 4 Yotim that don't have chelik in Olam Haba, and one of them is Achitophel. Seemingly, it's because he committed suicide. So seemingly, that's the source. Anyone that commits suicide, ain't like chelik in Olam Haba. Says the Rosh, nothing to do with that. Achitophel was okay that he committed suicide. He was having a bad day. He knew that he just basically lost the war. No problem. He didn't have Olam Haba because he started up with David. He decided to start up with David because he was actually rebelling against David. It has nothing to do with the fact that he committed suicide. So says the Rosh, wait a minute. Right? This is the Rosh, right? He's saying that if you're just poor and you're not, right? There's no lachlamais here, boys. If you're just poor or you're having a bad day or things are not going your way, you're allowed to commit suicide. So, wait a minute. So what is a case of committing suicide that it says that you can't sit shiva for him and you can't eulogize him? So what is the case? He says, the case is these crazy philosophers. There are certain philosophers who have everything going for them. They're rich and they're famous and everything is wonderful. And why did they commit suicide? Ennui. You know what ennui means? Boredom. They're like, hey, life is too good, I'm bored. He goes ahead and kills himself. Or like he says here, this world, terrible place. The philosopher gets up, God made this world, he did a lousy job. Terrible place, not worth living. Hey, but philosopher, you got everything. You're rich, you got everything. No, not worth living. Or the philosopher says, oh, I'm an neshama. My body is constricting me. I want to release my spirit so that I could, have more metaphysical experiences. Basically, that's the case of someone who commits suicide, that the law is, you don't mourn for him, no availeth. But any person who commits suicide, just because he's poor or singular miserable, ain't suffix she'ein by shum isser. Then he says, what? That's right. Say that again. What? Right. Very good. And then he says, poor people usually end up doing aveirus because afki zel lishmar atmai min achet shekol saris v'arois gam ha'oini mavirin adam al das atzmai v'al das kainai ain't suffix she'ein b'dei mutter. So basically, in a nutshell, the Some Rosh is condoning killing yourself if you're not a happy person. Right? Right? Now we can understand why it's very important to know if the Some Rosh is a forgery or not. Right? Because
I don't believe the
because
Rosh
if this is the Rosh talking, we're going to have...
He didn't kill himself. He was in prison for donkey's years and he didn't kill himself.
I don't know if it's Rosh. I think his Rebbe was in prison. I'm not too sure about the Rosh. I know his Rebbe, Maram Rebbe, was in prison. Right? So if this is the Rosh, if this is the Rosh, this is actually dangerous. This is dangerous. If this is the Rosh.
Having a bad day.
So now,
you didn't get the lunch you wanted to kill yourself.
Because of this tshuva, there are certain tshuvas in this book that are very controversial. Now, let's give you a little bit of background about the book. The one who wrote it, the one who found it, is a person named Reb Shol Berlin. Now he was a very controversial person. He was a big Talmud Chacham, but he was a little bit of a maskil, a little bit enlightened. Maskil means enlightened. He was a little bit more modern. Well, he's a huge Talmud Chacham, no question about that. And all of a sudden, he wakes up in 1793 and says, "I found the Tshuvas Harash, that actually another person a couple hundred years ago, Yitzchak D. Malina, was the one who compiled it. Yitzchak D. Malina compiled it, and he actually found it. Sounds very familiar. In some library, he found the manuscript. Right now,
Just like what's his name?
now, the Chida gives his stamp of approval. Most Achronim, it's very, like I said, the Talmud Yerushalmi, everyone says it was a forge. This, it's not so clear. We're not finished.
This tshuva, I didn't get the lunch I wanted.
Wait a minute.
What
now,
is that?
A little bit of a back, a little bit.
Is he being regularly poor, or is he poor that he was literally starving for?
Yeah. It doesn't make a difference. Even that's a big chiddush. Even if you're dirt poor, to say you commit suicide for that, that's not. Meaning, basically, what I'm trying to say is, if you're going to pass like in some Russians, we don't paskin. A terminally ill person could definitely kill himself because he's having terrible suffering. But we do not. I repeat, we do not paskin like this. But I just want now. Right side. Some Russians is a page. The person who put out the book, in Shol Berlin, he was very controversial, and he wasn't well liked by many rabbis because he was still a Muslim. Now, he wrote a sort of a commentary on something called Kisa de Harsna. That's a very funny name. Kisa de Harsna means what? Kisa de Harsna was a type of it's like sardines. It was a dish of a small dish of fish. That's a funny name to call a book. So the truth is, he himself says in his intro, why did I use this funny name? So first he says because the Gemara, when it wants to talk about something very small or not important, the Gemara says Kisa de Harsna. So he's trying to downplay his sefer. Again, Kisa de Harsna is his pirish on it. It's sign of humility. And then he says, another reason is because Harsna sounds like Har Sinai. And we know that the reason why it's called Har Sinai is because sin came down into the world, because when the Jews got the Torah, all the Gentiles hated the Jews. And then he goes on a tirade how everyone hates him and he's being pursued. And that's why it's causing a Kisa de Harsna to intimate how the Gentiles hated the Jews because they got the Torah, and everyone hates him, but he's really like Har Sinai.
I also hate him, so it's fine.
I want to tell you, we can. Some Rosh, the Ohr Somayach writes, the Rabbi Simcha has a pirush. This is not something you can just lightly dismiss in that sense. Now, but there is. It's almost like Da Vinci Codes over here. There are some who say that he was really hinting to the fact that the whole thing is a forge. How? Because Harsna also means destruction. Now, if you look at the name of the person who he said, the original one who compiled it. His name is Yitzchak Di Molino. If you read it very quickly, Di Molino sounds like demolition. I'm not making this up. So he was now the word. I'm like I don't think. Well, I don't know. We say demolition, but I think the original word in Latin or France is demolino, something like that. So basically, what they're saying was that he said the name Harsna, Heres, that we all know, that's modern Hebrew. Heres means destruction. And he also used a fictitious name, Demolino, and he was like hinting to the fact that it also means destruction, demolition, like Demolino, right? Be it as it may, the Somber Rosh is well known. There are many controversial tshuvas about, and that's why people think it's a forgery. Now, this is probably one of the most controversial of them. This is one of probably the most controversial about them. That is condoning committing suicide for someone's having a bad day.
What's the Makor?
His Makor is Shol. That's his Makor. His Makor is Shol. He says openly that Shol killed himself because he was having a bad day. Somber Rosh, get yourself an Oitzer Chachman, you got it. That's where I got it from. So yeah, of course. What do you print it there? New version. There's reams and reams. By the way, there are a lot of modern scholars who think it's not a forgery. It's not so. Wait a minute. So you asked me your source. The source is from Shol and from Tzidkiyo. Now, we'll get now. Says the Rabbi Oshri. Rabbi Oshri said like this. He brings down the Somber Rosh, and he brings down that maybe it's a forgery, and he goes and he brings down people who say it's not a forgery. He's going back and forth and back and forth. He says, but that much, Rabbi Oshri says, we could learn from Shol. Rabbi Oshri, that's the one who wrote the Mamakim. He said that much we could learn from Shol, that someone who is being tortured, he could yes commit suicide. Meaning, we don't have to say Shol is only because he's a melech, and we don't have to say because of a Chil Hashem, and we don't have to say because they were going to force Shol to do Avodah Zarah. Rabbi Oshri says that much we could extrapolate from Shol, that if you are caught by terrorists and you are basically sure going to die, you are allowed to commit suicide in order to avoid torture. Now,
without the mention of a Navi telling you that this is all going to
right, that's exactly the point. We said, so we're seeing two disparate views. One view is Shol accepts the rule. A Navi said he's for sure going to die. He's the Melech. He was going to have to do Avodah Zarah. Oshri, you'll say, Oshri, well, the truth is, if you look at the Shach and the Teretz Yisrael, and I believe the Rosh, a real Rosh, I believe they also agree with this Rabbi Oshri, that just not to have torture, you're allowed to commit suicide. But, and this is very important. This is very important. Even if we are going to agree with Rabbi Oshri, that's only torture. Not if you are terminally ill. Now, even though that itself is maybe the pain is equal, but anyone can understand there's a fundamental difference between undergoing torture than if God decided that if you have terminally ill. Even if Oshri never said someone could do euthanasia, someone could kill himself when he's terminally ill. Now, we're not finished yet. We have to finish. There's going to be a part two. There's no question about that. But we have the Chasam Sofer, because there's a big problem with Oshri, what he says. And like I feel that there are other Rishonim, other Achronim will say the same thing, that just torture is enough. Because, wait a minute, Reb Chanina ben Tarjian did not kill him. Wait a minute. There's an open Gemara, it's not like Reb Oshri. That's it. It says Reb Chanina ben Tarjian was getting killed. He was being tortured. He wouldn't open up his mouth. So, what do you do with that? So the truth is, the Chasam Sofer in Shin Chavav says, the halach is, you can never kill yourself. Ever, ever, ever. Torture, illness, no way. I don't care what the situation is. And he says, I have a raya from Rabbi Chanina ben Tarjian. And he says, and the Psalm Rosh is a forgery. He calls it Kisvei Rosh. There's no way the Rosh would ever write this. There's no way, because it's clear like day. You cannot kill yourself for any reason, no matter what the situation is.
The torture is like, it's mutter to kill, or it's chiyuv for you to kill because of the torturing. How can you say if someone didn't kill himself, other person killed himself, so you can just kill him for that?
Again?
No, I'm saying maybe he just chose not to kill himself. Even though his mutter
Oh.
chose not to.
Wait. So we have to end here. We really have to end here. And I'm afraid we didn't even do half of what we want to do here today. But I want to set up a picture. I want to get a picture, and we're going to say what you said. Snapshot A. Shol accepts the rule, which is where the Chassam Sofer is in that picture. No one can kill himself. Torture. No one, no matter what situation. Shol accepts the rule. King. Chil Hashem. A Navi said he was going to die anyway. He was going to convert. He was choosing to convert. Or, if Shaul didn't kill himself, thousands of Jews would get killed. That's one snapshot. And this is basically what we poskin. No one can ever kill himself. Basically. Other side of the equation. Some Rosh. You missed the bus? Go ahead, kill yourself. No problem. No problem. Just kill yourself. Right? No problem. Just kill yourself. Whatever you want. The dry cleaning is not ready? Kill yourself. No problem. Right? No problem. That's some Rosh. Right? And what's Ma'abed Atmil Das? That's only when you're some crazy philosopher. That's the other side. We definitely don't go that way. There's a middle ground where Oshri, and what I feel other people, torture, yes. Not to endure torture, and you can add, and if you know you're going to die anyway, maybe you can add that into the equation, yes. The only problem with that is, what do you do as Reb Chananya? Then why did Reb Chananya open up his mouth? Reb Chanina, why didn't he open up his mouth? Why did Reb Chanina open up his mouth? So Reb Oshri said what you said. Reb Oshri says, Reb Chanina didn't say it was usher. He just said, you know, it's better that God takes me, and I don't want to do it. I mean, it was a Maisa Chasidus. It was a Maisa Chasidus. A Maisa Chasidus. But there's another possible answer for the Kiddush Torah. Because Reb Chanina was wrong. He put himself in that situation. Remember the story? Yeah. What did Rabbi Yosef Kisma say? You shouldn't do this. Yeah. So, since he put himself in the situation, that's why he felt he didn't want to open up his mouth, because he sort of like brought it onto himself. So yes, Chanina wouldn't kill himself even though he's through torture, because either maybe for a bigger kapara, because sort of like he brought it onto himself, or maybe since he brought it onto himself, he's not allowed to take his life prematurely, right? But Rabbi Oshri paskin. Rabbi Oshri said this guy is allowed to kill. Again, what was the story? The mayor said, "I don't want to see my kids die before me." Which just in my mind, I'm not too sure if that's nice or not. I mean, we can't, God forbid, we cannot judge anyone the holiday. We cannot judge anyone. But just to say, you know, I want to die first because I don't want to have to witness my kids getting killed. But listen, you know what? I take that back, because the Medrash said that Tzidkiyahu said the same thing. Tzidkiyahu said, please kill me first because I don't want to see my kids getting killed. So I take that back. I retract that. So be it as it may. So that was the cousin. The mayor said, please kill me first because I don't want to see my family get killed. B, they're going to torture me anyway. This way I get a proper burial. Rabbi Oshri said, in principle, yes, he could kill himself. Again, only in that case, torture and everything. They could die anyway, not by terminal illness. None of that. Oh, he says, but he would not, he only gave a private heter. He only told him, and he told him, do not tell anyone that I gave this heter, because then other people may do it.
This is after the Holocaust.
He wrote it after the Holocaust. This is printed after the Holocaust. He survived. Oshri survived. He said, don't tell anyone. I'm only going to tell you because he's afraid that there'll be mass suicide. Beheter. But then he said that would be giving, that's what the Nazis wanted. And he writes here how the Nazis were amazed how most Jews did not kill suicide. And he ends off, in the ghetto of Kovna, where hundreds of thousands of people were killed, only 3 people committed suicide the whole war. Only 3 people committed suicide, and that's the way it ends up. So at the end of the day, bottom line is, Rabbi say we have a lot more to do here because a lot more Gemaras. a lot more Gemaras about suicide. The Gemara is filled with suicide cases. In the Tanakh we have only 4, but the Gemara is filled with suicide cases, and we have to go through all the cases. The bottom line is, at this point, Shol was an exception to the rule, according to one way of looking at it. And that exception may apply to a person who's being forced to convert. But it seems the consensus is that if you're being forced to convert through torture, don't kill yourself. We have the Psam Rosh, and we have this in between. But no one, at the end of the day, the Halacha is clearly, you are not allowed to kill yourself if you're terminally ill. And even torture is not so clear. Not so clear if you're allowed to. But I have to end here right now. I must say something. This is the most important thing. This whole shir was about, is it you allowed to or not allowed to? Is it permissible to kill yourself or not permissible to kill yourself? But that's clear like day. This halacha, that someone who is ma'abed atma ladas, we don't sit shiva for him, is almost never relevant. It is almost never ever relevant. Come on. Why? Because even if we say that you're not allowed to kill yourself for certain reasons, but if you did it because you are afraid or because you are in pain, you are not called ma'abed atma ladas. You are not called ma'abed atma ladas if we feel that maybe you did it because you didn't have all your faculties, or we feel you were majorly depressed, or we feel you did it because you couldn't endure the pain. Meaning, there's a fundamental difference. There's different levels. There's a level of ma'abed atma ladas that we don't sit shiva for the guy. That's basically when we say a guy was in his full faculties, and a full faculties. That's exactly the point. That's why it basically you never have this halacha. So ma'abed atma ladas is a worse level, where we know for sure you are in full faculties, and we know for sure you killed yourself, and we know there wasn't a very good reason behind it. That's step one. The lowest, the other side is a case where it's mutter. We're trying to figure out if it's ever mutter. But there's the middle ground. The middle ground is it was asur, but we sit shiva. What's that ground? That ground is we're not 1,000,000% sure you killed yourself, because even though you had a gun and there's no one else, but we don't know 100%. Or we think that maybe you aren't in your full faculties. We think you went through major depression, meaning you were basically unhinged by it. So basically, the halach is we never ever say someone who committed suicide don't sit shiva, because we always say probably the guy was unhinged, or he was very depressed, or he had a reason to do it. Not as permissible, but for example, let's say a terminally ill person killed himself. There's no question you sit shiva for him. There's no question. And even though now we're saying halakha it was wrong what he did, but he doesn't get the level of ma'abed atma ladas. That he should have had. It basically never happens.
Ma'abed atma ladas is what LMAO.
Ma'abed atma doesn't have to be. The Ram talking about it. The guy is basically calm. He says he gathers everyone together. I am going to commit suicide now. You see, I'm level. He goes up in front of everyone. He says goodbye. He jumps off the roof. So there's no suffix that he killed himself. No suffix. And we can ascertain that he was totally calm. Basically, the halacha never applies. Never. And nowadays, it never applies. You'll never find that someone commits suicide and the people don't sit shiva. Everyone sits shiva because of this reason. Basically, the bottom line is, you got it? There's ma'abed atma ladas, you don't sit shiva. There's permissible, which we're talking about today. Maybe it's never permissible. Maybe torture. Maybe. And then there's this middle ground that it was not permissible, but even so, you still sit shiva. Rabbi Isai, probably will continue this with other stories in the Gemara about suicide. Stay tuned. Okay.